So this is Pinwheel Days by Jennifer Bowling. And she says the recurring pattern recalls the childlike playfulness of a pinwheel blowing in the light summer breeze. The bold colors contrast against the cool background and evoke thoughts of laughter, joy, and running in the sunshine. It really does feel that way. It has that. I can remember making these with my grandmother, making pinwheels, and feeling like that was the most wonderful and amazing thing ever. And her quilting reinforces that jaunty, childlike, windy, just kind of all of the playfulness of this quilt. This is Red Giant by Joshua Dunn. And he says it's inspired by the sun's red giant phase, which will begin in 5.4 billion years. And he says that he uses the pieces that he did to create layered arches and curves, evoking a lava ocean. Oh, lava ocean. View of the sun on the horizon. A 1980s retro palette heightens the dimensional effect, reflecting on my fascination with space, its celestial marvels, and cataclysmic transformations. I love this quilt. I think it is so stunning, and it's to me, the beauty lies in the simplicity of just the three fabrics used so well. So where his giant red sun meets the horizon, the piecing is just, I think I've used this word before, but it's impeccable. It's just perfectly matched. And so as that sunlight hits the horizon and then the darkness behind it, I mean, it absolutely tells the story of the Red Giant. And the quilting is such an interesting pattern of diamonds and squares. It has like a star-like effect, I think, which, as we know, our sun is. So what a perfect quilting pattern. This is Unboxed by Paula Steele. And I mean, instantly, also aptly named, instantly recognize the message that she's trying to send. But when you read the artist statement, it makes it even better. She says, Unboxed plays with a standard log cabin block to create an off-centered frame. We rarely fit neatly into a box. Oh, preach that. Or within the set out parameters. This is my love letter to all of those who never quite fit where they are expected to, or constantly color outside of the lines. So you can see here the log cabin construction of the blocks, but I cannot pass up the opportunity to talk about the quilting. So she's done grid quilting on the bias, so on the diagonal, in different colors that are represented by the fabric. So she's got pink, there's yellow, there's that light blue gray, and even the dark blue. And so it gives it even more depth and dimension, and it's just beautiful to look at. Just side note. She also did a really fun and easy to miss binding where she put the unicorn fabric just in the corner, in the lower corner of the quilt. And then she echoed on the opposite corner the turmeric in its corner. So top left and bottom right. And it's just a nice little touch that shows just that attention to detail and makes it interesting. This is Whispers of the Acacia by Tsitsi Beharano. Is that you? Beharana. It's your friend. Okay, so we have Tsitsi's friend here who's going to correct my last name. We won't put her on camera. Say it again. Beharano. And what she has done with this quilt is use that light blue-gray as the backdrop and then created a line drawing with the remaining fabrics to show the natural beauty and palette of the acacia. So she says, inspired by the delicate yet resilient acacia, this piece reflects nature's elegance. It captures the intricate branches and leaves swaying gently in the breeze, each line honoring the plant's quiet strength. So I really love that. She said it embodies the beauty, endurance, and resilience of the natural world, subtle and so profound. And what she's done with her quilting is there's the poppy, and then next to the poppy quilting line is the unicorn, and next to that is the turmeric against the light blue-gray. So it's a repeating pattern, which actually serves to kind of give a stable background to highlight the line art that's happening with her hand-stitched pieces on the surface of the quilt. This is called Normal is an Illusion, and it's by Elaine Kawadias. I'm sorry if I'm destroying this name. And if you may not be able to see it from the close-up shot, we'll try to get far enough away so that you can see it. It actually says, normal is an illusion, which is a Morticia Addams quote. And she said, what is normal? Who decides what is normal? And what of those who don't follow what society deems normal? You can see her appliqued circles. And just this, it's so subtle. Gosh, it's so subtle. So she did these tiny, tiny little rows of the poppy with all of the little appliqued circles on top. And it spells out that message, but yet up close, it just looks like a random smattering of dots, which, I mean, isn't that really a reflection of society? We think we really stick out. Sometimes it takes getting some distance to see how we stick out. So this is Renewed by Elizabeth Ray. And she said, Renewed is part of my ongoing series exploring two-color stripes with the interaction of color and the secondary plus sign shapes. So it's 5 of the 6, and you can see that central plus in the center made by the 4 fabrics coming together with her matchstick quilting. I think we have two simultaneous themes going, the 2-color pairings and the uniqueness of quilters and people, and how important that is that we retain that individuality and diversity in our society. I really like the combinations that she put together. This was just one of the struggles that I felt like I had, is I could get 3 fabrics to work together, but once I put in a 4th, I felt like it clashed. But here she did that in each quadrant, and it really is amazing. So this is Tales of Timeless Threads by Jen Sorensen. I've seen a lot of Jen's quilts. She makes some really beautiful and interesting quilts. And she said her original idea was a complete dud. So after sitting on it for a while, I started fresh with a completely different direction. After recently making a quilt using a lot of bright colors, strips and triangles, I decided to try making a quilt with lots of strips, but more structured blocks, primarily using the fabrics Rain Cloud and Stormy and accents of poppy, slate, and turmeric. I love people who confess that sometimes it just doesn't go well. Right. Like, that's just the best. And she did this teeny tiny quilting on it, and lots of varying colors and widths of quilting. It makes it really interesting. There's even the Stormy quilting in the Stormy. So it looks like it's solid until you get up close, but it has so much texture. It's almost like a tatami mat. It just has that. You can see it. The density of it is phenomenal. I bet that thing is so heavy. So this is Matisse by Jane Stokes, and she said the quilt is hand quilted with thread colors chosen to match the colors of the fabric. She used all 6 again, so my hat's off to you. She said the colors of these fabrics reminded me of the saturated colors used by Henri Matisse in his artwork. You know I love a good artist reference. And so those of you that are familiar with Matisse's work, you can probably see the influence that his work has had on this piece. And she has hand quilted in the blocks with the color of that block. So from a distance, you get the solid color, but up close, you can see all the texture of the hand quilting. It really kind of drives home the imagery, I think. This is Blink by Jo Wollschlaeger, and she says, this quilt captures the blink of an eye, the snap of a shutter, the flash of a bulb, brightness as it fades into dark. So she's done all of the colors, and you can see how they are light. And the one, it's like a shaft of light has come in and lit it from the top right. And so you see the rain cloud and unicorn into turmeric on the top right corner, and then as it crosses like an eye, and then as it gets further away from that light source, it's just darker and darker. So she's done radial quilting, which really drives home that image of an eye or lens of a camera or the flash of a bulb. It just is very effective. I love this quilt. And she bound it in black, in the Stormy. So it makes that piecing just stand out. And she has done this circular piecing just so beautifully. So you can imagine the circle completed, even though it's not. The Solution Eludes Me by Elizabeth Misselli. And she says this design came about after playing with curved piecing and creating a look of woven layers together over a boldly striped background. After I put it all together, it reminded me of bamboo finger trap toys. And I see it. I instantly see it. So you can see, particularly right here where the fabrics cross each other at the very base of the Stormy and Slate striped background. So I'm not going to touch the quilt, nobody panic. Right here, there's an overlap in the fabric. So it ends up it very much feels like those bamboo finger trap toys. Tiny, tiny quilting in the background, and then this angled quilting that mirrors the overlapped and almost woven looking pieces over the top. So this is Arcturus by Patti Dudek. And she says, Arcturus, a red giant star, is the fourth brightest star in the northern sky. It is easy to find for amateur stargazers, and she put, like me, by following the curve of the Big Dipper's handle. Extend the curve beyond the handle and you'll find Arcturus. The star can be found right overhead in the summer night sky. The quilt design was loosely based on the concept of a medallion quilt and was a fun challenge to assemble. So the red giant in the center with these tiny little angled triangle pieces. She's done some big stitch quilting in the center along with what looks like very effective and tiny pebble quilting behind that red giant star. Her radiating out with the different colors on this stormy background with her big stitch quilting to reinforce the parts that she would like to highlight. I like this a lot. I like the vision of this a lot. This is Kaleidoscope by Claudia Banks, and she says the colors, curved piecing, and movement of the design are used to evoke an image reminiscent of a kaleidoscope. Remembering the first time looking through a kaleidoscope as a child and being fascinated by all the different shapes it can create with each turn. This one reminds me of one of our previous ones. It's a bigger scale and the quilting is very different. But it does have that, especially at the edges. It looks like it's been turned and then maybe turned again. And you can just feel if somebody did one more turn on that kaleidoscope, what would happen? If you've ever done a kaleidoscope and you know that when you turn, a lot of times as it's becoming a new shape, a lot of times it'll create almost this like warped feeling, like you're in a different, it's like twisting into something else. And to me, that's what that edge looks like. Like it's twisting into the next geometric form. I love that. That's so great. So the name of this quilt is F.U. Helene, and it's by Megan Jones. And I want to read what she said. She said, in the middle of working on this quilt, Hurricane Helene struck the United States, devastating the region where I live, Western North Carolina. For me, the memories of the destruction of our beautiful mountains and the trauma of the event are stitched into this quilt. I really appreciate the honesty of the title and her artist description. She goes on to say, when I look at it, I'll remember not only what we've suffered, but how we have persevered and shown the world the strength of the people from Western North Carolina. So it's a really interesting and fun combination of the swirling unicorn through this gigantic quadrant of the poppy, stormy, turmeric, and slate. So it's, the diamond. If you are familiar with driving through the mountains, it's like doing a switchback where you have to go up the mountain and then turn and come back. It feels like you're backing up. It feels like you're going the wrong way because you have to work around the natural contour and topography of mountains. So to me, these unicorn pieces working through this quilt feels like driving in and through the mountains of North Carolina. And it's some of the most beautiful landscape that the United States has. So I can understand Megan's pride and hurt at the way their land was really torn apart by Hurricane Helene. This is Unraveled by Susan Slesser Clay. I love this just at first blush. I just thought it's so interesting. She said, my inspiration for this quilt is the current state of our country. It seems that the very fiber of our country is unraveling. The strength of our diversity has bound us together and made us strong. That strength has been replaced by divisiveness and hatred that is tearing us apart. My quilt illustrates our many differences that are woven together to make our country strong and the gaping holes we are seeing as society unravels. I really like what she did with the quilting. So there is what appears to be continuous rain cloud. So the light gray blue quilting throughout the entire piece on this diagonal from top left to bottom right. And then she has come behind that and extended with the colors of the fabric. So the slate, the poppy, the turmeric, the stormy. And in doing so, she extended it to a point, but not all the way. So it does have this feeling of unraveled edges. I think her quilting really effectively communicates the theme and idea behind this quilt. And so each row from the diagonal has that color quilting in it that somewhere along the road abruptly stops, communicating those gaps where she feels the society is unraveling. So this is called Double Scoop by AnnMarie C Cowley. And she said, a few years back, I was using up orphan blocks in pot holders. One included a quarter circle and a Tri-Rex. I liked it so much that I drafted out a variety of ideas, hence my quilt. It's quilted with my signature seersucker quilting, and the back contains many leftover pieces. So seersucker, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a fabric that we use in the South quite a bit. You'll see it in men's suits on Sunday morning at church. And it has this wonderful texture. If I would so dare, I would touch it, which of course I won't do that because we don't touch the quilts in Quilt Says. But it has this really bumpy textural thing that goes on. And I love that curved pieces with the half rectangle triangles or tri-rex, actually, as she put it, and with the unicorn quilting all throughout it. It really does feel like a double scoop. So this is Urban Equalizer by Sarah Ruiz. And she said, in 2022, I created a small collage from washi tape, which turned out to be the perfect inspiration for this quilt. The stripes remind me of seeing bright city lights through the blinds at night, or the stacked lights of a music equalizer. Diagonally quilted lines in different thread colors add another subtle layer of strips to the overall design. I really like this. And I think she did exactly what she said, which is it does look like lights outside through window blinds or a music equalizer. And her quilting, these diagonal lines also are in the color threads of the fabrics. That's also been a really common theme. Like you feel like you're either looking into something or something is jumping out at you off of that dark background. So this is called Sonia by Liz Young from British Columbia, Canada. And she said, I was introduced to the Bauhaus School of Design and Sonia Delaunay's work while studying textile arts at university. Although she was not a master at the Bauhaus, the influence of her work can be seen throughout the curriculum of the school. This quilt plays homage to Sonia Delaunay and her circle work. So again, love the modern artists displayed here at QuiltCon this year. Gosh, I love art so much, and modern art is obviously my favorite, or we wouldn't be at the Modern Quilt Guild show. But this is such a wonderful tribute and homage to her work. And the angle, I think I saw this one on Instagram, and it had the like, oh. So using those shapes against a lot of negative space is a feature of a lot of modern artists, but in this one, this tribute to Sonia Delaunay, and you can see in the quilting that the lines of the quilting echo what's happening with the lines of the shapes and how they've been put together and create that movement and interest. This is Teetotum by Casey Grossman. She says the combined quarter oval and circle repeating units are flipped, rotated, and multiplied to create movement and dynamic color palette, pushes the eye through the design and keeps you off kilter, which I love that, and I think that's great. The units within this quilt were inspired by Jenny Haynes' twice cut drunkard's path technique, using her basic and long oval drunkard's path template sets to cut the shapes. So you can see how it creates these very sharp corners. Again, not touching the quilt, very sharp corners. It has a very complicated feeling, almost the dichotomy of the smooth, easy round curves, but then these jutting angles create just this interest, but also there's a feeling of dissonance, but in a way that comes together really beautifully. And you can see with the continuous turmeric quilting that kind of unifies it. So there's nothing pulling your eye away from all of those, the interaction between the curves and the really sharp points. All right, so we're cruising into the home stretch. This is Cicada Invasion, Sia in 17 years. And I feel like it's going, that's the motion. I cannot wait for you to see this quilting up close. But Dawn says that she was inspired by the 2024 invasion of cicadas, which emerge every 17 years. Used variegated thread on the wings to create the translucent effect, then darker thread to provide definition around each cell. The background quilting depicts the sound waves these creatures emit, submitted with the encouragement of the women in my family whose artistry and quilting skills far surpass me. Love to my soggy bottom girls. Those wings, I am blown away by that. The way she did, in fact, use variegated thread to create some degree of transparency and this like little teeny tiny jaggedy black thread to isolate each of the cells in the wings. I do love that wavy quilting all around it. It does very, very much feel like the sound waves. So effective. Every part of this, even the pebble quilting of the eyes, And it's like zigzag quilting across all of the arms and legs. The design is beautiful and the use of colors is amazing, but I think the quilting just pushes it right over the top for this one. Reaching for the Podium by Diane Paquin Provost. I have to read this because it is so interesting. She said the design is inspired by the Paris Olympics in the summer of 2024. So it said it can be divided into 3 parts. The top part is an athlete performing floor exercises. The left is an athlete on the parallel bars. Love it. Totally see it. And on the right is an athlete performing on uneven bars. The large light blue circles indicate that they are all from the same team. The smaller pink, red, and dark blue circles show they are different athletes. I don't know if you see this piecing right here that's dividing the upper part from the bottom part. That's all pieced, little tiny strips. Actually, there's just a ton of little tiny strips all across this whole quilt and quilting to reinforce the message of reaching for the podium for the Summer Olympics in 2024. So this is Game On by Helen Wilkinson. And she said, Game On is inspired by classic board games like checkers, Parcheesi, and backgammon. I spent a lot of time playing these games with my father when I was growing up, and I still love to play board games. The excitement of rolling the dice, moving up the scoreboard, or winning the game reflected in the explosive design of the patchwork and quilting. I love this because it's exactly what I thought. I walked up and thought, this looks like a board game. So, Helen, if you see this video, you really achieved what you set out to achieve. It does have that feeling of moving through a board game. And there are all these different types of piecing with half rectangle triangles. There's 9-patch, quilting that reflects all of these same processes. I really love it. This angled quilting on the side is just really, it draws the eye in the same way that a board game draws your eye to where you're trying to get